All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, every once in a while I'll run into a storyline in one of these segments that reminds me of my time period in corporate America and why I'm so happy to no longer be there. There's a reason why I call corporate America High School 2.0. It's because it's filled with the same nonsense, the same intrigue, the same immaturity, the same overly politicized bullshit as high school was. The only difference is that the people range in age from 25 to 55 as opposed to ages from 13 to 18. That's the only difference between corporate America and high school. And unfortunately, as many people find out when they try to enter into corporate America, it's not so much about how good you are or how much merit you engender for yourself. It's more about who you're able to link up with, what clique you're a part of. That's going to determine your success. And unfortunately for Drew Brees, the formerly superstar quarterback of the New Orleans Saints, what he's realizing is as your stock drops, you have to tolerate more and you have to go above and beyond to prove that you're down with the team. That's something that he's finding out, especially in the aftermath of the blow-up that occurred when he did not respond the way in which his quote-unquote teammates, i.e. his cult overlords, his black mafia overlords, wanted him to respond after George Floyd's ritualistic removal, when he made certain statements, once again correlating the national anthem and the American flag with the alleged protests that supposedly were in connection with George Floyd's ritualistic removal. But in my view, most of these protests are just about people attention mongering. On the surface, maybe they care about the so-called black plight, about 20%. The other 80% is just attention mongering, especially with people who normally make up demographics that are accustomed to being marginalized themselves. They're trying to jump on the bandwagon of the so-called black man's issues. But either way, just getting back to the point, Mr. Drew Brees, he's basically now being forced to walk the strip by the pro-black mafia. Like, you ever watch any of those prison movies where the dude goes to prison and he gets turned out into a bitch? He has to wear a wig or he has to hold on to the turned out pocket of his cellmate just to survive in prison. That's how Drew Brees is now in the NFL. He has to do whatever the hell his pro-black mafia overlords tell him to do, or they're going to call him a quote-unquote racist. And not just Drew Brees. Any so-called black man on one of these football or basketball teams who's a three-dimensional thinker has to be very wary of the environment that he's in, because it's almost approaching pseudo-communist Russia dynamics in these locker rooms, where if you're not showing that you're going to agree with what the most woke person in the locker room is saying, you better hope that he does not have the power to influence the general manager, because you might find yourself off the team. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Back to the show. This next segment features somebody that Renee Montgomery has been talking about a lot lately, Drew Brees. Renee was impressed with Drew Brees, the New Orleans Saints quarterback, with the way that he kind of addressed his own comments about the national anthem protesters over the years. He had initially said and had been saying,
as we can see here, as I always tell you, brothers, the pictures that they show in these segments speak 1,000 words. The index finger pointing upward, one eye closed, showing that Drew Brees has been quote-unquote enlightened or illuminated to the cause. The right eye represents the quote-unquote sun.
Years that he was against the national anthem kneeling protest because he felt that it was disrespectful to the flag and the military. He said it again earlier this year.
This once again is Colin Kaepernick and his proverbial MK Ultra twin, Eric Reed, bowing down the knee to Baal.
And a lot of people tried to cancel him. A lot of very high-profile people tried to cancel Drew Brees. Drew Brees took a day, thought about it, came back and said, you know what, I've had a complete change.
As we can see here, Drew Brees, right hand over the heart for quote-unquote masonry, ring finger and middle finger together to show you that he is in the know.
He said, I was wrong. I understand that
That is not the so-called West Side symbol. That symbol is for the unification of Saturn and Apollo, or the black and the orange sun. That's what that's for. Drew Brees is trying to make sure that he secures his future. That's why he has to get down with the pro-black mafia, which in and of itself is a branch of the overall global Luciferian agenda. What a lot of the so-called pro-blackities don't grasp is that the reason why the mainstream media promotes movements like the Black Lives Matter movement and many of these other discordian anarchic movements is because they hope in the aftermath of the chaos that's caused by these protests, they can bring in their own order. And once they're able to accomplish that, they're going to move most of these pro-black groups to the side.
About putting a spotlight on social injustice and police brutality and trying to help this country acknowledge that and figure out a way to fix the problem in our country. Renee, you've said multiple times that you believe his apology, you believe his new statements, and you feel like he's made real progress, correct?
Correct.
So it was interesting to see Drew Brees at practice on Thursday morning, along with the rest of his team, wearing...
Look at this. They got Jacob Blake's name on Drew Brees' helmet. What a fucking bizarre world we're living in. That's why I call, once again, this is why I call 2020 the year of the mind fuck. And the smaller your mind, the bigger you're getting fucked.
Tape on their helmets that all said the name Jacob Blake. I thought that this was very significant.
Of course you did. You're a super liberal Caucasian Jew. You're always advocating for the dismantling of any form of manhood amongst all other nations of men. I mean, come on, man. This dude's getting bitched out. Look at this nonsense.
Everything that Drew Brees has been going through over the last couple of months. That he is a very high-profile person. And
I expect these mama's boy Negroes to do something like that. You know, put Jacob Blake's name on their helmet, not even knowing the story, not knowing what went on, becoming extremely defensive when having to face facts about why what occurred with him occurred in the first place. I expect that from most of these guys because, for the most part, the so-called black man is a huge simp, meaning a woman trapped in a man's body. A lot of these cats, they think like women and they conduct themselves in a very feminine way. But there are also a bevy of so-called black men who question what's going on, why they're being geared towards a certain thought process, and they refute it because they actually have a functioning brain.
You know, they had a lot of NFL teams cancel their practice on Thursday to allow their players to participate in social justice causes and to do things like that.
The biggest social justice cause that the so-called black man could immerse himself in is making sure that he's a father over his family. That's the biggest social justice cause that you could be a part of, assuming that you have a family. If you don't, making sure that you're becoming the best person that you can become day after day, and hopefully starting your own business. That's the greatest social justice reform that the so-called black man could ever be a part of. Not worrying about whether or not felons have the right to vote in Florida. Once again, that's another Democratic voting grab. As I've stated in other videos, you'll notice the Democratic Party is so down in the dumps. They become so low level in their operating procedures that they're searching for votes from anywhere and anyone. That's why they want to lower the voting age, because they know you have to be a child, a retard, an illegal immigrant, or a sexual pervert, or an ex-con to want to vote for them, or just someone who's not in their right mind.
Saints had their practice, but all of the players, including Drew Brees, showed up with Jacob Blake's name on their helmet. Renee, when you see something like this, what are your thoughts?
I love it.
My thoughts are that he's getting pimped out. Of course, the broad says she loves it because this represents the emasculation of her overlord, of her master, the person who she wants to be considered equal to, the so-called Caucasian man. The so-called black woman does not want to be equal to the so-called black man because essentially she knows that she's above the so-called black man on the liberal totem pole. She knows that already. So when she says she's searching for equality, she's talking about with the so-called Caucasian man.
You know, there's going to be people that are going to say, well, why?
That he's a hoe, that he's getting bitched out, that he's being forced to walk the strip, because all those things are true.
They cancel the practice. And I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's important for people to understand you have to allow people to grieve however they want. So
really? So if people decide to grieve by not taking part in this ridiculous emasculation ritual where you put another man's name on your helmet, is it okay that you decide to do so? And do others have the right to say, how come you don't want to be a part of what the team is doing? Does it work in the reverse? That's my question to the toxic super liberals.
team, that particular team, talked amongst each other, and all of them felt like, all right, we do want to go practice, but we want to make sure people understand that Jacob Blake and this protest is on our mind. That's their solution. So I don't want people to start judging how people are supporting the cause, you know.
And what causes that exactly? Do you even know? Brothers, what the super liberal factions do, and of course super liberalism is just code for socialism, which is just code for Marxism, which is just code for communism, which is just code for Luciferianism. What they do is they try to give you goals that are not reachable, that are so abstract that there's no way that you would even be able to quantify that you're approaching a finish line that doesn't even exist. Oh, we're going to protest for equality. Well, we want to make sure that everyone loves each other. Those two things are never going to occur in life. So really what you're hoping for is to attack people's thoughts until they're so mentally fractured that they have no other option but to kowtow to your whims. Because you need the validation of others to actually certify within yourself that you're thinking the right thing. Most super liberals don't even know if what they believe is correct. That's why they try to force their beliefs on others.
Think a support of the cause is a support of the cause. So I love it. Like, however people want to show their support, we need to accept that.
Yeah, it seems like, at least to me, that Drew Brees really does believe in what...
No. What's very obvious to me is that Drew Brees knows that this is his last season in the NFL. If it's not his last season in the NFL, second to last, definitely, because he looks done. And he's just trying to get through this season as smoothly as possible so that he can retire with his money and head into the commentating booth and see if he can outdo Tony Romo. That's his goal.
And like Renee's talked about his apology a lot, it does seem like he is actually, he's kind of living his apology, and he has followed through. It doesn't seem like it was just lip service on Drew's part.
In baseball,
Drew Brees, for all intents and purposes, has lived an NFL life that has never been about lip service. He's always gone above and beyond to help them Negroes down there in New Orleans, which is probably not helping, because I think that many so-called black people, especially low-level thinking so-called black people, their main problem is a sense of entitlement, that everyone owes them something. At least our people not wanting to compete and not wanting to win. Our people always want to be equal. They never want to win. As long as you have that mentality, you're never going to accept that life is a competition. You have to want to win.
players and teams are also standing up for social justice issues. On Wednesday, Dom Smith decided to take a knee during the national anthem. It was.
Yeah, I remember this dude. This decline that started crying like a broad in the press conference.
That he has taken a knee during the national anthem this season, but he felt inspired by what was going on in the NBA and from NFL teams and said it was time for me to do something in Major League Baseball. He went 0 for 4 in the game. He admitted after.
Yeah, because he had all them tears in his eyes. He couldn't see the goddamn baseball.
And that mentally he just wasn't there yesterday. His mind was focused on other things, particularly the shooting of Jacob Blake. After the game, he gave a very emotional comment about why this has had such a strong impact on him. Take a listen.
I think the most difficult part.
Look at this fool. Between this jackass and Doc Rivers, man, this is a fucking joke. Unbelievable. And for some strange reason, the so-called black man seems to believe that crying like a hoe in press conferences is going to make the other races want to allow him, quote-unquote, allow him to be, quote-unquote, equal to them. The so-called black man is he's stuck inside of a Russian egg, man. You open up the shell, it's another shell. You open that up and it's another one and another one and another one. And the so-called black man's brain is somewhere at the very center of all of these coverings, man. You have to stop asking and begging for sympathy and for acceptance. You know when people like you? When they see that you don't give a fuck about them and how they feel about you, then all of a sudden that makes them curious and inquisitive. Wow, why does this person not give a shit whether or not I like them? What's this person about? And they may not like you because you have that tact, but they'll respect you a lot more than the clown ass nigga that's always begging and pleading everybody to love them and all this other bullshit. If you're a so-called black man and you're working at a job right now, your mentality should be, what can I do every day to put myself in the position where I don't have to come to this job? I don't tell brothers to leave corporate America and have nothing to show for it or nothing to to do with their lives. You should be plotting and planning and figuring out what you want to do. There are more ways to make money right now than ever in history. There's more information that's accessible to the masses of the people than there ever was in the history of the planet Earth. So the only question that you should be asking yourself is, what's taking you so long?
Is to see like people still don't care.
People still don't care. They don't care. So let me ask you a question. When you grew up in whatever neighborhood that you're from, and I don't want to assume that this brother's from the hood, but we all know. When cats talk about the shootings and the crimes that occur in the hood, do they cry like this? The last time that I heard a so-called black man speak about people not caring, and it was in reference to the crimes that go on in the hood, it was Ice Cube in the film Boys in the Hood. Either they don't know, don't show, or don't give a damn about what's going on in the hood. Niggas brag about the crimes that occur in the hood between so-called black people. Yeah, son, Reggie was thorough. That was my nigga. He got locked up. He doing 7 to 10, but man, he was thorough out here on these streets. What does that mean? That means that he was selling drugs and shooting other so-called black people. That's what the fuck that mean. But when it comes to the so-called white man shooting a black man in the back, you gotta cry and blubber like a broad on TV. These niggas should be ashamed of their goddamn selves.
And for this to just continuously happen, I mean, it just shows. It just shows that I just need somebody to hug me and tuck me in tonight. Just the hate in people's heart. And, I mean...
The hate in people's heart? That stupid nigga Jacob Blake was wrestling with cops and was trying to run back to his vehicle. For what? I'm sorry, but whew. I would expect the cop to think within his own mind, you know what, it's my life or his life. Because the cops don't know what he's going back to the car to go try to get. Oh, but he was with his kids, though. So what's that mean? That means that he don't have anything in the glove compartment or under the seat? Come on, man.
I mean, that just sucks, you know?
A lot of things suck. The main thing that sucks is the so-called black man's outlook and his self-image. That's what sucks.
Being a black man in America is not easy, so...
Very emotional.
Life ain't easy. The main thing that makes being a so-called black man in America not easy is the lack of self-knowledge. Because we have an unbelievable lack of self-knowledge, we cannot count on one another to have each other's backs. That's the main problem. I don't expect anything from the other races. They're supposed to look out for their own. The real reason why these woke niggas are always so upset is because deep down they know they can't count on their own brother to have their back, because they don't know what's within the heart of their own brother just because he happens to have woolly hair and melanin. There's no culture amongst our people, so there's no code of honor or dishonor.
From Dom Smith there.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I was saying you have to allow athletes to grieve how they want. You know, some people, he tried to play. As you see, he actually tried to get out there and play and couldn't do it. He wasn't mentally there. So people don't understand why there were protests, why players don't want to play for a couple days, take a couple days off. They need time to get over it. That's traumatic.
Time to get over what? You mean Jacob Blake getting shot in his back because he made a series of asinine decisions? It's very unfortunate. But I mean, come on.
As LeBron said, players are scared.
You know, brothers, we have to make sure that we're very careful about the women that we procreate with, because so many liberal black females, they love to push and promote fear. I promise you that person, Renee Montgomery, has never had a run-in with a bad police officer. I promise you that. She's just playing a role on TV, as are 95 to 98% of people on television, playing roles. That's why I knew that homeboy from Speak For Yourself, Jason Whitlock, I knew that he wasn't going to last on that TV show very long. In one of the last episodes, I heard him talk about the coronavirus, and he said the media was overhyping the coronavirus, and that was like 2.5 months ago, in the midst of the lockdown, or just coming out of the lockdown, because they were bringing in the Jacob Floyd storyline. And he was talking about how the coronavirus was overhyped. So I knew that he wasn't going to last very long on mainstream TV. You know, brothers just have to come out of this emotional morass and stop letting people make you think that you should be scared of everything that's around the corner. But anyway, peace.